Hey everyone, welcome to the Agile Austin Product and AI SIG for February. It's February 28th. We have Zoo here with us today. She's going to be talking about AI enhanced leadership, clarity, accountability, and personalized growth. So, um, pretty excited. I'll talk a little bit about Zoo and her talk today in a moment. Before I do, I'll talk just a little bit about Agile Austin, 501c3 nonprofit, been around for oh gosh, it's going to be decades at some point. It's got a board of directors, and one of our board members, Ben Rogers, our CTO, is here today. A lot of good stuff happens at Agilos and has been happening for many years. You can sponsor if you'd like. Membership is also $35, has a couple of benefits, but most of what we do is completely free. Like the meeting today. Uh, there's 6 special interest groups right now. You can see coaching, Agile at Scale, book club, product and AI, which you are part of by being here today, the Leader SIG, and Lean Kanban. We have some sponsors. Agile Velocity has been a platinum sponsor of Agile Austin for just a real long time. ResumeX is one of our newer sponsors, a gold sponsor, and silver sponsor is Ad Maloria Coaching. One of those benefits that you get as a member is you can apply for a professional development scholarship. If you have questions, just feel free to reach out to me or Ben on the call. We can talk a little bit more about that. Other benefit you get is Agile Velocity 15% off workshops. If you're interested in volunteering, everything we do here is all volunteer. It's our community that offers services to our communities, including the SIG. So just reach out to contact or reach out to me. Vishal and I lead this SIG. There's just a little bit about both of us. And here's our charter, which is really the intersection of product, AI, Agile. And we really like having people that are practitioners join us and talk about what they're learning, how they failed, how, we can make our industry better for everybody here. We have a couple of sessions coming up. We're actually full through technically through July, believe it or not. Really excited. Matt Van Itali, I think is how you pronounce his name. He's CEO of a software company and talked about Gen AI tools that he rolled out for product in his executive leadership team, what he learned, and what he wished he'd known before starting. And we got another couple of folks that are on deck. So today, Zoo's going to be talking about managing team performance, specifically in the realm of product management. That's her role, and using these AI tools to enhance leadership for the teams. She's going to talk about practical applications, delivering feedback with kindness, clarity, empathy, clear expectations, and kind of translating to a culture of accountability, using all these great tools. Just a little bit about Zoom. Uh, she's been doing this for over a decade in the tech industry. She's been at Atlassian, Meta. She's actually the chapter lead for Austin for Women in Product. She helps to mentor and empower the next generation of product managers and leaders. She is involved in so many community groups in Austin, like many of us here, and you know, helping equip leaders with tools and strategies to inspire her teams while using AI thoughtfully and ethically to amplify the impact is what she's kind of learning and sharing here today with us. So here's with all that said, I'm going to hand it over to Zoo, and she can talk a little bit more.
Matt, thank you so much for that wonderful welcome. Now I have to follow sort of this introduction you created for me, so I'll live up to this. Thank you all for coming here. If you did not intend to come to a session talking about AI leadership and how to manage people, then this is your time to like Homer, get into the bushes and disappear. But I think everybody's here for that, so thank you for being here. I mentioned earlier as y'all were popping in, like I was not a believer in AI. I was a little bit like later adopter. I know it's still early on, but like we've been talking about AI for a couple of years now, and I was like, yeah, this thing, it's like a terrible Google search, right? And I found that it was all in the way I was prompting and using it, just not really understanding the tool that was really just getting me terrible results. And as I started learning how to use that tool, uh, kind of something clicked. I am not pretending I'm like a prompt engineer. My prompts are the best, but I have found success with what I'm doing. And so I wanted to share sort of what I have found, especially in the realm of people leadership. Everybody talks about how to use it to do some of the work, how to, synthesize things from customers and data and all of these things. But I found that there's some other important work that we do, especially as managers. And also I have found that I learned better when people showed me prompts. Like things blew my mind when somebody I saw put a prompt in. It's like, put this in a table format. I was like, you can you can ask it to do something other than text. Are you out of your mind?
Hmm.
And so watching other people prompt, watching other people use it and really understand like how are they getting what they're getting. People saying, oh, I just write PRDs with it. I was like, it does a terrible job. It's like a templated, vague, I don't know why I would use this, to, oh, I understand how you actually get what you want out of it and how you work with it. It's not all at one click. There's definitely work involved in the prompting and iterating and providing that context that you need to get there. And so that's why I'm passionate about sharing it, because I completely flipped from this is stupid, it doesn't work, I don't know why, just a big hype, to I get it now. And I might not be using it in the best possible way, but I'm learning, and I'm learning things that I want to share with others so they can leverage them. So
Just
that's where, yeah,
just to be clear real quick, okay, so you didn't take any prompt engineering courses or anything like that. This is just basically like hands-on experience.
hands-on experience and learning from others from sessions like this.
Okay, awesome.
I have gone to sessions like, how do you do that? Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, I never got anything like this out of it. So really observing, asking people, and from sort of hands-on experience. So yeah. All right. I'm gonna kick things off with a little bit introducing myself, but in the context of why am I passionate about this? So first off, in that first image, you see me doing gymnastics at the Olympics, and I would not
Hey,
have gotten
Zoo, I don't think
there.
you're sharing yet.
Oh, I'm not sharing a screen yet. All
Not
right.
yet.
Well, that's not very helpful. Thank you for making sure that I actually share screen. Okay, hold on. Here we are. Here we are.
Woohoo, there we go.
All right. Thank you. I get like straight into it.
So
Yeah.
excited.
All right, so here we are. Here are the pictures that I'm talking about. And so that first image is me at the Olympics. And the way I got there is understanding not only the discipline and perseverance that it's required to get there, but I got there because my coaches provided specific feedback on how to improve. And that has stuck with me because I started doing this really, really young. Now I kind of continue my athletic endeavors in cycling. And yet again, I use a lot of electronic tools that provide me feedback. They provide me with what power, heart rate, how am I going, the speed, right? And I'm able to alter my performance by understanding the real-time feedback that I'm getting from all of these tools. As a leader in the community, leading the Austin chapter for Women in Product, I also believe in this mentoring, uplifting other women, and fostering that sense of community through sharing what I have learned. And so again, providing that feedback and sharing that with others is important to me. And then when I become passionate about a topic, the first thing I want to do is create a talk and share it, right? Like, here's what I learned. I think it's so valuable that everybody should know. I don't want to keep it to myself. And in the last photo, like you can't leave dogs out of it, right? You got dogs, you got to stick a dog picture somewhere in there. But there's actually a relevance. Just like in all the other parts of my life, I have learned through training my dogs that they require patience, kindness, but also sort of that leadership and specific feedback, accountability to. If I ask them for something, if I expect something, you don't just let it go, right? Like you need to be consistent in how you provide that relationship with the dog and the feedback in that training. So that was about me, but let's talk about how we are impacted in sort of leadership roles as we manage people. And so as leaders, we have a lot to deal with. There is organizational change all over the place, as we saw, layoffs, all kinds of things happening, right? We got to lead through that change. There are market fluctuations that we got to rally around our teams. There are communication barriers, not just from remote work, not just from time zones, but also from working with someone whose first language is not English. Or even communication preferences. Some people like to observe things and then react later. Some people are on the spot, right? All of these things are communication challenges that you have to manage with people. You're managing conflict because they're diverse personalities and sometimes they clash. Sometimes they communicate differently and they don't understand each other too well. And you're balancing empathy and accountability at the same time. You're trying to maintain team harmony. You're building relationships while you're trying to hold people accountable. And yet, a lot of the times we're not provided the training and tools and support to do that, especially when we're asked to manage large teams. And so we're kind of left to our own devices. And this is where AI can be a great assistant when you're not getting the support from elsewhere. I also want to be really clear that the support is not for lack of trying. There's always, right, like small teams, budgets, and one HRBP, HR person can't support as many managers as they're given and with every question they have. So this is where you can leverage some of these tools to help you in managing. Before I go much further, I want to address kind of this. If any of you have that feeling like, yeah, right, AI is going to do my leading job now, right? No. AI is the support here. You do the leading, right? Just like you would not get an assistant, get an intern, and hand their work in without even reading it, without adjusting, without providing feedback, tweaking it. You don't just take it over to your CEO and say, hey, this intern, it's done. You don't use AI the same way. You just like punch it in, something spits out, and you're like, cool, that's good enough, right? So AI is here to do the grunt work for you, crunch the numbers, do the hard writing, but you are here to do the thinking, do the leading, and do all the things that you need to do as a leader. One more caution, all of this works much better when you're able to provide the AI tool. I'm going to be talking specifically to ChatGPT because that's what I've been using up until now. But we are moving at my company to Gemini, so I'm going to have to figure out how to translate all of my sort of workflows into Gemini now. So if you hear me say ChatGPT, doesn't mean it only works here, but I just have very specific workflows that I use there. But please make sure that you understand your company's AI policies. Can you put what kind of information in there? And the truth is, the things I talk about do work better the more you are able to share with the AI tool. The more context on the product, the people, the better output you get. Context is everything. But check first, don't put that private data for a company and get fired because we told you to put the context in there. Cool. So today, we're going to specifically talk about setting clear expectations, what that might look like. I'll get into a couple of prompts and things like that. There'll be a little bit around like product, but I try to generalize a lot of these so they apply to any of your roles. So you'll be able to translate that. Managing accountability. And then we'll get into supporting personalized growth opportunities. So in this first section, really the setting those clear expectations and the people that you manage, understanding them is what paves the way to success. So it's not enough to say things like do better at and fill in the blank, right? Put whatever skill you want in there, but you actually need to describe and provide feedback on what does better look like. Nahum, you have a question, go for it.
Yeah, I was just going to chime in real quickly and try to say, instead of thinking artificial intelligence, what I like to do is I like to change the A to assisted intelligence.
I
And,
love that.
like I think that helps me get over, because I get it. You know what I mean? There's a lot of anxiety with uh, how it's used and everything without going really into it. But I thought I'd share that with everybody. If they change the A from artificial to assisted, it may lower some of that.
I love that. That's a really great thought, and I'm glad you shared that. I didn't think of the acronym in that way, but I definitely thought of it as I was explaining, right? Like the intern, the assistance there that AI provides. That's great. I actually had a coworker, as I was talking to him about building this talk, tell me a story from his life. And he was telling me how he built in the past, like early in his career, this beautifully crafted roadmap, and he presented it to product leadership. And then after his presentation, he got feedback, be more strategic. And he's just like, I don't know what that means, but that's all he got. You need to be more strategic when you do these things. And luckily, it didn't get him dissuaded from doing better. He was just like really determined to try to figure out what that means. And so what he started doing is he started observing others around him from what he perceived strategic was. And so he started learning that strategy requires providing context and framing. And it needs to be provided within the larger picture of business priorities, competitive landscape, and product positioning. And as he figured that piece out, then he also realized, like, actually, to truly engage those stakeholders, he also, on top of all of that, needs to be a master storyteller. And so he went through several years of observation and piecing this feedback together to what it actually means and what are the specific skills that he needs to improve, where he could have improved a lot faster if somebody had given him the definition of what does it mean to be more strategic, right? And so that's what we're talking about when we're saying setting clear expectations, is not just saying do better. It's saying, what does better actually look like? What does it comprise of? And how do you go about being better? And so I'm going to go back to my roots in athletics. I like this analogy of not being the judge, right? Like when the judges in my gymnastics competition raised the score, it was feedback that I did well or not well, but it didn't provide me any feedback on how to do better next time. That's where my coach stepped in and was able to go and, hey, you need to lift that elbow over here and you lost some points there. And so next time when we approach this is what we're going to do in training. And here's how we're going to compete next time, right? And all of this translates to how you can act more like a coach rather than a judge when you're leading your people. So go into some of those more specifics. I pulled some of my prompts. They're a little out of context. I tend to be very long-winded with my prompts. And so I go on and on. Like some of my prompts are like really long because I tell it all the things. But here specifically, I was working with a product manager, was earlier in their tenure, and I needed to coach them on how to build better product requirements documents, PRDs. And as I was thinking through that, where they were in their career and why they might be not very thorough in their product requirements docs, I kind of realized they might not actually understand the value of them and why they should put all this work into writing them. So I used ChatGPT. I already knew this information, but ChatGPT made it easier for me to organize it in a clear and concise way. And so I just asked it like, hey, let's talk about the purpose of product requirements documentation. Why do product managers write them, right? This came after several prompts saying, hey, I need to coach this particular PM on these things. We're working on that. Let's talk about this. And so it was actually able to give me a format. I might have used a couple of prompts like, oh yeah, use these sections. And I love the sections on purpose and why it matters. So I can say, not just here's the purpose of the thing, but why it does matter in the context of how you work with your teams so that they could get that context. Then I was like, okay, now we have this structure of what a good PRD looks like, what better looks like, but there are different levels of product managers. So I can take it into another level and say, at their level, I don't expect this person to manage highly complex PRDs independently. What I want to make sure that when I'm providing that feedback is that for larger and more complex projects, I expect them to get help while I still expect them to be responsible for those pieces to be in there. So I wanted them to know what the pieces are, but what pieces, like the goals, the scope, the functional requirements, those are just describing what the work is, and they should be able to do that at their level. So this was a very specific person, very specific level, very specific situation. And for them, I did not expect them to go as deep as understand like testing criteria and metrics and how are they going to do this. But they sure needed to know that they need to be included, and they needed to seek help on figuring out how do I define this? Where do I go with this? I don't just omit it because it's not within my scope and level. It needs to be there. So how do I get it in there? Who can help me? Risk and dependencies, cross-functional communication, right? So I was able to get further specific, not just what it's supposed to look like, but what is it supposed to look like at their level? Now they can also say, oh, wow, like, yeah, if I start doing these other things, they're not at my level. That means I'm really getting better, right? Because I can start to do some of these things independently. So that was a specific feedback that I worked on that then helps us get clear and be successful. Are there any questions about this particular example or how I got there, the context? Are we good? Cool. Managing accountability really starts with those clear expectations. And I want to share an example when I joined a team and we needed to, as a team, kind of form and hold each other accountable. But it doesn't just happen, right? It needs to be an explicit agreement. And so what we did is we wanted to set kind of these clear expectations with each other, because when you have team members that are not held accountable or not pulling their weight, that it drags teams down, right, overall. And so we kind of created this like ways of working session. We whiteboarded, you know, not just the things that we wanted to be true, but also the things we wanted to avoid. Created this beautiful brainstorm. And then, you know, in the old ways, what you would do is kind of group these ideas into themes called affinity mapping. And then from those things, you might now go into sort of the next step. The nice thing is that a lot of the modern tools today will actually provide you with AI tools like FigJam, Miro AI. They'll all have a tool where you can say, hey, organize this for me. Because I was really comfortable with ChatGPT, I just kind of downloaded PDF of my FigJam, shoved it into ChatGPT, and I gave it a prompt that looked something like this. So you can see how long-winded my prompt starts to get. And you don't have to read these or screenshot it if you want. But really the point is that I give it a prompt that is step-by-step how I wanted to approach it. Like I will give it context. As a new team, we're forming, and here's what we're trying to achieve. We want to have ways of working. We want to work together, feel engaged, be excited, and we want to deliver the most value. Matt, were you saying something?
Yeah, apologies. Is this the prompt here, or this
This
is
is literally my prompt.
like so you said we did a collaborative session, blah blah. We want to create some principles, analyze, and so then did you feed in the feedback? Like were
I
there
took literally PDF, like I exported my FigJam into PDF, and ChatGPT could recognize the individual
right,
piece, and it would just say,
right,
okay, here's what people said. And so in the old days, you can kind of see the purples together, right? I would do that manually. And honestly, I kind of forgot myself that I should use ChatGPT. So I kind of started doing this manually because I'm still from the old world, used to
right.
doing affinity mapping.
Yep,
And then I was like, I'm just gonna play with it. I'm gonna put it into ChatGPT, see if it figures out the same thing I figured out.
that's
And it was
crazy.
great. It was great. It like figured out
That's
all the
crazy.
things, right? And it just
Very
like,
cool.
yeah, made these groups. The affinity mapping was amazing. And
Yeah,
then I told it further, and you could do this in multi-step process, right? Sometimes I just get like ahead of myself, excited, and I tell it all the things I wanted to do, but I still tell it, kind of like sequentially in that single prompt what it needs to do. So after I told it to, hey, we need to, get these groups, and then analyze the team's feedback, group the feedback into themes, and come up with 3 suggestions for team principles for each theme based on the team's feedback. So here's what that might look like. Obviously, I like anonymize some of this, so it's not like a word for word, but it basically spit out this thing. We have these themes. I think we have more themes, but I picked 3: communication and collaboration, documentation, and then how we want to approach feedback and continuous improvement. This didn't come from me. I had input in that feedback session, in that little brainstorm, but it came from the team, and the team is more likely to rally behind these things, agree to it, and do it together, hold each other accountable if they were part of creating it. And so it pulled some feedback insights, right? So these were like literal feedback insights. Like the need for communication and transparency was mentioned. Getting unblocked quickly was mentioned so that we can move fast. Time zones can complicate catching up on statuses of projects. So this is because we have team in India and team in the US. And so how do they figure out when they come online, like where we are at, how can they continue? And so then the 3 principles it came up with when I asked it was, we embrace, and I gave it a little bit of a format, like I wanted in this specific wording, like we do a thing, like in the present tense, right? So that was a finesse that you do with the prompt, like, okay, you gave me the principles, now put it in this format. So it wasn't definitely like from one prompt, it spits all of this out. Through 2 or 3, 4 different refinement prompts, this is where we got. We embrace open communication and prioritize public channels for updates over DMs. It was a problem for us, people DMing each other, so we couldn't tell what was happening. Everyone attends daily stand-ups to align on work progress, to get unblocked quickly, and we create clear handoffs between team members and time zones to keep moving forward with projects. Again, I didn't have to come up with this as a leader, product leader on a team, not necessarily people manager, but a product leader on a team, but the team agreed together. But you can do this same thing with people that you manage. How do we work together? How do I help you? And how do you interact with me, right? Same session, you can apply kind of this thing to anything. And then kind of, you can go through the themes and figure that out. So this is an example of how you can hold each other accountable, but co-create that together. And you can use AI to speed up the process over sort of the traditional manual affinity mapping, and then all of the nuance of wordsmithing, the principles. You can kind of come to these things much, much quicker. I'm going to go into the next section, but I'm going to pause for any questions right now. All righty.
I like that. One thing that I've come up with in my teams, and I've done product and engineering, is something similar, like tenets or a charter kind of thing, has been super useful. And then there was a question here about, do you have, this is a really great question, saw it somewhere, from Suba. Do you have a set of leveling guidelines for your company that helps frame the conversation even more?
So you're talking specifically what we talked about earlier, like at their level. Yeah, so we have career ladders. If I have them already identified, I might say this person is L1, this person is L6, this person is M2, right? And now it has context because I just fed it the career ladders. That's a full document at every skill, what they're expected to do, which is actually the next section. So great bridge. So let's talk about that. So supporting personalized growth opportunities. This goes every direction, right? There's some people that need to catch up and grow. And there's some people that are already performing, but you want to accelerate that growth. It works at every level. And there's a great quote by a Dutch author that says, when a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. And I think that resonates so great here, because growth is such a personal, context specific thing. Just like plants, right? Like they have different care instructions. They have different environments in which they thrive. Some need more sun, some need more shade, some need more water. And so each of our people that we manage needs to be uniquely supported. It is very, very hard if you have a large team when you're trying to keep all of that in your head, or you have some notes you need to refer to, like, oh, how did they like to do this thing? And so this next section, I'm going to show you how you can leverage AI to not just identify some of the growth opportunities, but actually tailor them how you provide that feedback based on things like their preferences or things from the past. So what I like to do, and I'm going to have to figure out how to do this in Gemini, again, just getting into Gemini, but in ChatGPT, if you have the paid version, it has the projects feature. And so you can feed into the project, upload files that might be updated one-on-one notes. It might be their last performance feedback for a person, right? You can make like a folder for different people, or you can just upload them all into the same project, and then you can just like refer to people, right? Like I have Susie, I have Maria, I have whoever, and it will, as long as your files include those names, it knows what is what. You can include any different updates that they have provided on deliverables, especially the ones that were great. And those documents like career ladders can go in here as well, so that there's context on where those different people are. And so as you maintain these artifacts and update them and re-upload them back to ChatGPT or whatever other AI tool, you have sort of this up-to-date context that you can provide it. And you can just go straight into prompting. You don't have to say like, okay, this person, and here's the history of that, and help me figure this piece out, because you're kind of maintaining that, but it does require maintaining these artifacts along the way, right? There's great, like you see in Slack, somebody's praising a team member that you're managing, like, wow, you're like, we're really, really helpful on this particular project. Grab that Google Doc, paste it in there. That's all you need to do. You don't even need to format it. It already has the date. It already has the person from to, right? At mention, bam, done. Keep sort of the praise document, or just keep it all in their one-on-one doc, right? If it's not shared document, it's just your document, you can just pop it in there and keep those notes. Nahom, you have a comment, question, go for it. When Matt unmutes you, when he finds the button, he's looking for it.
Yeah, so I have a paper subscription as well. So when you said that, I was like, I wonder if she has something like do you have the top tier one? Because I know there's different levels, or is it just
I think it's the regular paid subscription, because I have one for work and I just pay for my personal, like the next, whatever the
the
regular.
$20 one, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
It's a
okay, cool.
project. You just create a project. Project has a definition where you can upload files and have kind of common project instructions. If you haven't used the custom instructions, there's like a section for that. And then there are the chats underneath that all use all of those files that are common to that entire project, any chat you create within it. So if you have like product strategy, if I'm like using ChatGPT for features and PRDs, I will have my up-to-date product strategy uploaded there. Again, assuming my company, it's a company ChatGPT, it allows me to do that, right? All of those things. And then I just go straight into like, hey, in the context of our strategy, I want to do this thing. Help me position that.
That's
It already
awesome.
is there. I don't have to now go get it and tell it all about our strategy at that point.
And then at the very end, I don't want to derail you, but I did have, some feedback as far as the PRD is concerned. It's not really like related to the what you're discussing. So at the very end, if we have some time,
We will have some time.
all
Yeah,
right,
no,
we can
great.
discuss it.
Please
Yeah.
unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you.
So what I do here is I just kind of maintain these artifacts. One of the things that in my learning process I discovered is things that kind of morphed in ChatGPT or any other AI tool, right? Like as history goes, it won't remember what you chatted about like a year ago, especially if you do like long prompts and you chat for a long time. Kind of forget some of those details about that project way back when. So I would not maintain these things that we're talking about, like, oh, grab that and just throw it in chat and like keep it in there, because it reinterprets it multiple times over the chat history, and the longer it gets, kind of almost like honestly, I don't know technically what the term is. This is where I need to do more education myself, but it just kind of like loses the specificity and it's just like, they did something awesome. But if it's like in your document that you now referring to later in a year, you say, hey, look into that document, find the time when they did the awesome thing. I don't remember what it was. I think it was in the February and was in this part of the product, or I remember it was some feedback they got from someone. I just don't remember the details. Go fetch that, go find that in these documents I've created. It does a much better job than just keeping in a history of the chat, which is why I'm recommending sort of like keeping separate artifacts to upload rather than just keeping a long chat going. Although they're improving the models, and I might be wrong by the time you go try this, right? Like they might be improving all of these things. Emiliana, go ahead.
Question there, because I was trying, I just curious if you've tried this. I was trying to keep doctor's notes for interactions that I've had taking my mom to the doctor. And in talking to ChatGPT, it sounded like I could have it update the notes itself, those documents. I haven't tried it, but have you tried that, actually having, if you were pasting rather than going back to the actual file, but actually having it go off and add a new section and add notes to it?
I have not tried. Thank you for teaching me.
I'm
Things
not
I learned.
100% sure. I'm more of I was trying to test again ChatGPT to figure out how I could keep a record or have a running log of all these interactions. So it was one of the things that it said it could do. I just haven't actually structured it. So more of investigative point for all of us, it sounds like.
Interesting, interesting. I think it also depends on, can it do it? Probably. Can I maintain it that way? Like, is it convenient enough for me to open ChatGPT when I need to save that thing, or is it quicker for me to already open? So I think it's also a workflow question as much as it is, can it do that? But that's a good point to like investigate, because for different people, different workflows might make more sense. So thank you for sharing that, because I was actually not aware of that, or haven't tried it yet. So I will right after this. I'm like, oh, can you do that? And how can I leverage that? Cool. So let's assume you're maintaining all of these artifacts. So how might you use it, right? Maybe you're trying to make a promotion case and you're needing to like create a very compelling narrative to support and have evidence for why you're promoting this person. Well, what are you going to do? You could do things like extract some measurable achievements from either your one-on-one notes or some other file that you're maintaining around like their performance. Maybe there's some metrics within your role that you're maintaining around that person. You're just like, hey, extract some of these things and support. This is our baseline, and support why they're overperforming, over that baseline. You might have career ladders. Again, can help you like, hey, this is what my person is doing. Help me position it against the career ladder and make a case for why they should be promoted and why they should be promoted now. And now bring from some of my notes specific examples that show that they're already performing at that level. And then you can draft that promotion case. Again, you're not going to just say draft and hand it in. You're going to read it. You're going to refine it. You're going to kick out some nonsensical things that you might think is relevant. And you're like, yeah, no, this doesn't fly at my company, or this is not what I want to highlight for this person. But it's going to be much faster process than you going like, that time in Slack, you remember when they had that awesome announcement about that project? And I don't remember, what was the thing I want to mention? And then what you end up doing as a manager, you have lots of people you're doing this for. You're like, they did awesome, because you just don't have the time. And unfortunately, it just gets vaguer and vaguer the less time you have managing more and more people, right? And so if you want to step up your game as a manager to be specific and provide that supporting material, both to the company for something like a promotion, but also the employee now understands that you're paying attention, right? Like keeping these notes, and they feel rewarded, and they know that their manager actually understands the quality of work that they're producing. That includes things like I already kind of started talking about, like the meaningful recognition, right? You could even say, hey, I know I've asked them to at some point early on when we started working together to tell me a little bit about how they prefer to be recognized, right? Publicly, privately, these different things. And so if you have a team that's very, very large, let's just assume there's some of you out there might have 15 people. You may not remember every preference. And you could actually go here like, hey, I need to draft some things. Also remind me, should we send this as an email or should we post this in a public Slack channel so that it can get the recognition in a way that aligns most with how they want to be rewarding. And then performance reviews. Those are a big time suck as managers, but they're important, right? They're that time of year that not only are providing the small pieces of feedback throughout, but this is the thing that's on their file, right? This is the thing that goes towards their promotion and ratings, and this is what affects their bonuses sometimes, and next year's raises and things like that. So we take this super seriously, but again, it's a lot of work. And usually if you're a manager during that time, you're still doing every other work. This is on top of your work. You're also crafting all of these reviews. And so, you want to start with the context. I have actually recently produced a blog. I will link to it via QR code here towards the end. It's about self-reviews, but all of those things can be applied to downward reviews. And I'll be actually publishing another blog. So if you follow me, that will be kicking out on LinkedIn sometime in the next month or so. But the way I approach this is if you have a very robust process at your company, it will start with like people submitting their self-reviews. So you get to read those, right? And they provide you a lot of like, here's what I did, and they make the case for themselves. Then you can use all of the notes that you have, as we already talked about, and you'll also probably have a few things in your head like, hey, we really need to include these things that they did awesome. I want to really flag on make sure they continue to do those. Or if there's a particular growth feedback that you've been working on, and you want to make sure that it's kind of captured in that review, you would also sort of prompt with that. You can ask it to summarize, right? Like, hey, here's what I've got. Like, give me a very, very rough draft. And what you might provide at my company, they provide like templates, or they're like, you're going to fill in these 3 questions, X, Y, and Z. And then you can just say, summarize it, put it in my template. Let's start with a very rough draft. Let me see what we got, from all these artifacts I've been collecting, all the feedback I've been providing all of this year. And it may get really close, and you will then refine from there. So I'm providing several prompts here for those types of reviews. And then I'll link you to the blog. So evaluate the uploaded documents to identify and I'm using the reports, you might use name Maria's, key achievements, challenges, and growth opportunities. Those might be sections that we are asked to evaluate on our performance reviews, right? If you have a self-review, what you might do is compare the self-review with the draft that I created from my artifacts and highlight the areas that they highlighted as either growth opportunities or achievements that I did not capture, so that I can decide whether I should include them or not, or how should I address them. Like, they think this was an achievement. I thought it was a failure. Let me address it in the performance review that there's some gap, or vice versa. They think they have a gap in certain skill. I actually think they're doing awesome. We need to correct this, right? Like, we need to correct this perception, and I want to bring that around. And so doing kind of gap analysis on some of these things can be super, super helpful. Are there any specific gaps in skills and behaviors that I'm trying to address? And are they sufficiently detailed? And am I providing constructive feedback and examples? Check for any assumptions and generalizations based on factors unrelated to performance. So I want to check myself as a manager. Am I being biased? Based on tenure? Am I saying things like, in their 10-year tenure? I don't want to do that because my first-year employee might be overperforming my tenured employee, right? And so I will give it some prompts to check me for bias. Gender, role, tenure, personality traits. Review the feedback, performance examples in their review to assess how well they align with the company's rating guidance for performance rating that I want to give them. You're not asking AI tool, like, what would be their performance rating? You should already know that, but you can certainly ask it like, hey, help me check myself should make case, how does it align? And you could ask it like, if I wanted to promote them, what are the, case for and case against that promotion? And that can, even if you're not planning to promote them, you could still ask that. And you can see where the gap is like, I'm not seeing how I would support that, right? Because X, Y, and Z. It might spit out, or it may actually come up with something to like, I didn't think about it that way. Like they're actually performing in this one area. Let's use that as a highlight. I'm not ready to promote them, but let's use that as a highlight where they're overperforming. If you want to QR code this, that's the blog on my LinkedIn. It's speaking specifically about self-reviews, but it goes through that thorough way you set up the project, you add context, and it has a bunch of prompts for different sections as you go from rough draft through iterating through refining. And then you would use similar approach when it's a downward review, just prompts related to the people that you manage.
I also dropped the link to the LinkedIn blog post in the chat. So,
Love it. Thank you. All right, y'all. That's it. Questions. Emiliano or Nahum, one of you. I think Nahum, you had another question about the PRDs. Think you were saying?
Okay, cool. I can get myself off mute. Okay. Yeah, so let me just kind of prompt you, and I'm having this problem. So just a little bit of background to kind of help you understand a little bit about me. I'm in the quality assurance space and have been for about like 10 years. When I saw the PRD, I thought of a situation. It was like, okay, there are times, it doesn't happen all the time, but when it does, it's like, how can you improve the process of things coming down the pipeline. And once it gets to me, come to find out, for whatever reason, the feature or the scenario that we're talking about wasn't what the stakeholder had wanted. So through the UAT, you find out this is not what I asked for. So how this aligns with the PRD, it's like, well, we have a PRD here. How did things get so bad? So I like to read books and things of that nature. And I came up, I saw a process, behavioral driven development, where it changes basically how people communicate with the shareholder or the stakeholder, to where you can communicate this kind of stuff, not at the end, but in the beginning. So my question was like, have you had any experience before I go into the theory, right? I like the person, the author that was conveying this message to me, but I understand, since I don't really have any experience with it, that it could just be theory right now. And if anybody, has had any experience with, does behavioral driven development improve the PRD, or if they can give any feedback. I'm gonna try the things that you've said as far as like trying to get, AI involved in it. But I wanted to use this time to just get your expertise, or anybody else's, honestly, as far as all of that is concerned.
I don't think I have my head wrapped from your description about what exactly behavioral driven development is, and I'm not familiar with that term. So
Okay.
Ben has his hand up. I figured one of the engineers here would be like, I know, go for it, Ben.
I'm a crusty old QA engineer, so I have a lot of experience with behavior-driven development and have some very strong opinions on it. Probably too long for today, but just to summarize, behavior-driven development usually uses a language called Gherkin, given, when, then. So you've probably seen that to
Okay.
describe
Yeah.
a scenario for a user story. So that's supposed to give a shared understanding to different groups across the development spectrum. And so I know, Max, you're going to be very you're going to basically understand that I've got a kind of negative perception of how limiting that can be in terms of what the definition of user stories is. And so, yeah, I'm kind of pessimistic, at least, about behavior-driven development really helping things out personally, myself.
Okay. All
Thanks,
right.
Ben.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll reach out to you afterwards to see maybe if there's another avenue to go to make better use of, the PRD, and ask, prompt AI to do other things, than go down that road. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
Emiliano.
I just want to add a thing, which is, I mean, even independent of particular formats for writing, I find often it's a communication breakdown more than anything. I think Jeff Patton talks about like user stories, but it's really, in my experience, it's around not having a kickoff meeting where stakeholders and whether it's the product team, the engineering team, um, really take the time to understand the scope of the functionality or the outcome that is needing to be delivered. And I think that's compounded when you also have delivery processes where there's not enough outward visibility of the thing that we're starting to build, because ideally it's not that catching that error is not something that should happen when it's at the QA stage. I mean, it's really, there should be forcing functions along every stage from the conception of the PRD to doing like light develop or light product sketching or UI interfaces. So it really, to me, oftentimes it's more of a communication gap of keeping information siloed than it is actually around the specific format of which framework is it being created under.
If there is a repeating pattern, we tend to run into X, Y, and Z. I would spend time explaining that as a context to ChatGPT, and potentially at the next start of a project. And it depends, right? Like, I don't know enough about what your PRDs look like, whether this would work, but just as a food for thought to try, I would feed it the PRD, feed it the context. Like, this has happened several times before. And by the time we get to the end, these were the problems and here's what it took. Evaluate this PRD against these potential things, that outcomes that we have seen in the past. How can we avoid them? What would you suggest? What are the questions we should go answer? What might be missing, right? And so I like doing diffs. Like, so I'll give you a couple of examples that I've used it for. I like always experiment. Like, I wonder if it can do this. I was dealing with providing feedback in a document, and I felt like the document wasn't getting better. What is going on here? And then I noticed in my email inbox that it had like the comments, right, back and forth on the particular Google Doc sections. And it will have the original Google Doc section and then my comment, someone else's comment, other comments, and it's like comment resolved. And it's like, I'm going to download this and feed it to ChatGPT with a current version of the Google Doc and ask it which of my comments were addressed and how. And it was able to parse it out and tell me which sections have been resolved without actually making any changes based on the suggestions I have made. And I was able to understand the gap really quickly, rather than in my head, like, I think I said something about this thing. Let me go in the history, figure it out, and now compare it to like current version, past version. It just like did the diff for me. And I was like, okay, these sections, I really wanted to fix. These comments got resolved and I really cared about incorporating those. And it's still not there. Let's have a conversation. Let me bring that back without doing a ton of analysis myself. That was the one thing. The other thing I have done recently is one of my engineers asked me about like, hey, how do we want to address this gap in product? It was a rejects code that was evaluating names, and we found that we have a gap, like names with particular special characters like hyphens and things like that just weren't, processed properly. And I was trying to figure out like, okay, well, what else if we address the hyphens? What else we are not addressing? And so like, hey, we serve customers in North America and Canada, so I don't need to go like full on foreign characters, right? Help me, like, here's what we wrote, the requirements, here's the code snippet for the reject, like, how can we improve it? And it was like, oh yeah, what about apostrophes, like O'Connor? And what about like junior, JR, period? I was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. And you may not, like, I might insist on putting the accent on my A, because that's my actual original spelling, or somebody, from Canada, French speaking, and all of those things. So I was able to actually like give feedback to an engineer without having a full engineering background, by thinking through the product implications, but then asking ChatGPT specifically saying, hey, here's rejects, help me improve this further, and then maybe parse it and be like, these things don't matter so much. Let's focus on these things. Why don't we incorporate that? So there's a couple other use cases I've used it for.
Cool. We are at the top of the hour. Any last short question? All right. Hey, this was an amazing session. So thank you so much for all you shared today. I think we covered not only what you promised to deliver, you over delivered.
Oh, thank you.
The fast feedback today. We came here to learn a lot about, using AI tools for helping give feedback and grow team members, especially product management teams. And I think I know I got a lot more out of it than just that. So just, my humble thanks and that. Thank you to everybody who just kept, Nahom and Emiliano and like there was somebody else who was like, oh, she just left. Suba. So many people that ask great questions along the way, and that really builds our community. We create the space for ourselves here. This is a gift that we give to ourselves. So really appreciate everybody here. I dropped a bunch of links for the Slack community and the recording of the session and so on and so forth. So if you have any questions, you can just reach out to me. And Zeus, thank you so much for today. Really appreciate you.
Thank you, everybody. Even if you just listen, if you got something out of it, thank you for coming. And those of you that had awesome questions or taught me things during this session, even bigger thanks to y'all.
Sweet.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Zoo. Thank you so much. You have a good day.